So first of all, I want to say congratulations. Everybody cheers to Ria. What an amazing, amazing achievement this is. And I'm really proud of you, even though that seems like a mad thing to say. But I am really proud of you. Really, really proud of you. You're just one awesome, amazing human being.
Oh,
When I was reading, I'm not a big poetry reader, but when I was reading This One Life, what really struck me is the dedication that you have to looking deep within, to your writing, and to everyone around you, how you take care of everyone, and sometimes to your own detriment, and always with such grace and presence. And I want you to know that I appreciate you, and I'm sure that everyone here appreciates you, and everyone watching on the replay appreciates you. So please take that from us to you.
oh, thank you. That that wasn't rehearsed.
Oh, no.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, you're a really amazing woman. And this is, I don't know where this book's come from. This is an amazing.
not sure I do.
So I'd love to know this one life, this one life.
hmm
Why did you write this book?
The easy answer to that is because Jules Swales told me to. Not quite. It's not quite, but a big tribute to Jules on this. So Jules is my writing teacher, and I've been studying with her for many, many years. I keep seeing my mascara keeps blotching. Jules has been my writing teacher for many years now, and she suggested that I study Rainer Maria Rilke's Duino Elegies for 2 seasons actually. And the idea is that I would soak in the poetry and write my version of the elegies over the course of the two sessions. And when I first read the Duino Elegies, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to write like that. Like that's just, it's so dense, so poetic, so deep, like really deep, and deep in a way of no explanation of what he's actually talking about. You really have to kind of, let it soak in for yourself. And so the invitation was to write like that, basically write 10 elegies. And whereas normally with the writing class, I would write several pieces a week, with these, it was really just working on one piece the whole week. And I was practicing my writing for more hours in that writing classes than I have done for a long, long time. I was spending hours and hours. So I was like filling pages and pages and pages with just words that I just didn't like. It was like throwing millions of darts at a dartboard, and then extricating the words and the lines that felt like they had the meat and the power in them. And the earlier versions to start off with were not as strong as the later versions. I could see the strength of them going. So, and they really were a deep dive inside me. I think all of my writing is a deep dive inside of me, but I think this was a deeper deeper dive. And there's lines and there's poems and there's themes and there's insights that came out of it that surprised me. I mean, I love to be surprised by my writing, but yeah, it took. So that's where and how that it's come about. And then at the end of the second season, she suggested making it into a book. But they've had a lot of work done on them since then as well. Like that just wasn't the end of it. They've had a lot of work done on them. That even now reading them, I get surprised by some of it.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. And I've heard you say that you're really proud of this book.
I am. Yes, it's interesting. Like this is the fourth book of my own that I've published, and I published the anthologies as well of which, and I've got writing in them. But I think the first time you're so self-conscious, like you don't really, you know, you put the book out into the world, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, people are going to read what I've written, you know, and there's that fear around it. I don't know if it's to do with that. You know, this is the fourth time I put a book out, so you know, I have more confidence about the process, and I have more confidence about how it might be received and what it takes to get the book out into the world and everything. But also there was something about this when I finished editing, like, so I've edited it several times. I've had a professional editor. Linda was going to join us. I don't know if she's made it, but Linda, she went through it and she made some really good suggestions. And then I worked on it again. And then it went to the proofreader, and the proofreader's a fabulous editor as well. And he made a couple of suggestions, which I really liked. And then when it was finished, I just sat there. It was like I just stopped typing. I was like, this is the best writing I've ever done.
Wow.
And that was, and I actually posted about it on social media at the time. And I'm not saying that it actually is the best writing that I've ever done, but that feeling of satisfaction, I've not had that before with any of the other books. It's always been a bit of, well, I know if I worked it and worked it and worked it a bit more, I'd probably be able to make the writing better. But you get to a point where you say, it's enough, you know, that I've done enough. I'm not going to do any more on it. But with this one, I really felt like that. Now, if I look at it in 2 years' time, I might go, well, I might have changed that, or I might have changed this. But in that moment, and I think it's also to do with, I didn't think I could write like this.
Hmm.
And I proved that I could.
Yeah, the writing's so different for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
always think my writing it is ordinary. Like a lot of my writing is ordinary. I think I can see the extraordinary aspects of life, and spiritual aspects of life, and I can see them in the order. I see the miracle of day-to-day life. But this is writing was very different to that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell. And without further ado, we should hear one of those pieces. So just to reiterate that the tonight's about reflection and connection. So any reflections that you have while Ria's reading, we'd love to hear them. So we're now going to hear from Ria reading What the Dying Learn.
God created darkness, souls half hidden by shade. Fear laced it with punitive dragons. Life breathes in its shadows, half breaths, unworthy a desultory taste. Not enough sculpted across a heart, carved by the chisel of maternal instincts. The weight of being a good mother, a hammer on chisel, used indiscriminately in the hope of doing the right thing. No mother can deliver on that promise in the eyes of her child. Her tools carved this burdensome adult from the clay of innocence. Her words fissures in the marble, shadows from the tree of misguided protection. Cracks plastered over with band-aid, a life of jagged edges. Life drew blood and deemed me unworthy. We're all damaged goods, am I right? There is not a one amongst us wholly perfect. We are all flawed. Jesus died on the cross for our sins, yet man hoisted the petard for the misdemeanors of Adam and Eve, damned me to a factitious Gehenna, a shadowland with no light to guide me home. I built this purgatory with my own hands. blooded and torn from the effort. I bear the scars with fortitude, with pride. The effort exhausts me, yet I persevere. I laid brick upon brick to build walls that later I dismantled. Offload this hammer and chisel, passed down through the blood of ancestors. Stop carving out a bad deal. Oh, to shed new light on this tiny span of existence, this oh so short life, this microscopic grain, not even a dot in God's eye. Compare pi to eternity and we don't even come close. Is this what the dying learn?
So much in there. Would you like to share what the inspiration was for that poem?
I can't say that I know what the inspiration was. You know, there was so much writing that I did in order to extract that out. But it very much seemed to me about the angst that we all have been conditioned into living with. And I know that while I was writing it, I realized that, it's not my mum's fault that, I'm the way that I am. It's not her fault that she's the way she is. And it's like that this is passed down from generation to generation to generation. All this conditioning that we have, all of this way of being in life, and what we pay attention to in terms of the noise of our thinking and the conditioning, the self-talk that we have. It's all been done innocently, but we live with it all unless we see something that helps us to see that we don't have to live with it all. I mean, we still do live with it all. It's just that you have a different relationship with it, so it's just different. But I also remember writing the bit about being a microscopic grain, a dot in God's eye. Like, I remember writing that still, even now. And when I look at it, you could almost think it's me. One of my things underneath is about making myself small, kind of tinying myself in. And that was like, I'm way smaller than I even think I am. I'm way small. I'm not, but it's not an inadequacy. It's a power. And it was so liberating to know that in the grand scheme of things, in God's eyes, I'm just this tiny, tiny, tiny thing. And that puts my whole life into perspective. There's eternity, and there's my, short life. It feels like very short life. But there was such a power in that, such a liberating feeling in that.
Wow, I can feel it. Can feel it, yeah, absolutely amazing. I could spend the whole time just talking about that one poem, but as we're going to give the flavour of the rest, I'll move on if that's okay. So in this next section,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull out some lines that really stood out to me, that seemed to like jump out at me, and it's quite hard to limit it. And I just love to explore them with you, really, what they mean to you. And if anybody has read This One Life and wants to share their favorite lines or anything that they want to ask, then absolutely do that, and
Yeah.
we'll make some space for that for sure.
And even if the lines that we're talking about, if somebody else has got a different interpretation of it, I think that would be fun as well to hear.
That would be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be really fun. So just looking in my little book, and there's a line in, yes, Elusive Wisdom, the poem Elusive Wisdom, on page 5, if anyone's following on. The very first line.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that. Read it out and tell us more about that.
Okay, so face values are nothing more than dirty smears on a window. And, I don't know what I meant when I wrote it. I'm not sure that I meant anything, but I know when I wrote it, it made perfect sense. And so the way that I look at it now is that you can look at it from two perspectives. One is the impression that you make of somebody especially when you first, when you first meet a person, you make a judgment about them, don't you? They say don't judge a book by the cover, but don't we always? So important to get the cover right. And so like when you think about those first impressions, there's the two aspects to it. One is how you see the person. And you can only see a person through the lens of your own thinking. And so often when we're making judgments about people, when we first meet people, we haven't got clean lenses in. It's tainted by our conditioning, it's tainted by what we think. We make judgments about people. I remember, I don't know why this has just come to mind, but I remember I had a meeting with a guy that I'd never met before. And when I met him, he was the image of an ex-boyfriend that I didn't have good feelings about. And I remember my reaction being to that person. It was nothing to do with who that person was totally to do with the relationship I had, which wasn't very good, with the person that I had before. That completely tainted my view of that person for a little while, not for long, I have to say. But yeah, so when you first meet a person, that's it's your impression comes from all of that conditioning that we have. And then the other person, the way that they're acting is potentially being informed by all of their conditioning. So, like we can bump into somebody. Well, I remember somebody bumped into me in the street one day. And, there's like, I was just like, oh God, what's going on for them? And it was almost like they didn't even notice that they bumped into me. They were so caught up in their little world. So the behaviors that they're displaying are based on, their conditioning and the dirty lens that they're wearing potentially. So
Yeah.
and I think that's the meaning that I've made of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So good. It says everything in that line, doesn't it? Yeah, so good. Absolutely brilliant. And as someone said in the chat, it sets it up. It sets up the whole book, which is just fab. Yeah. Okay, I'd like to move on to a feminine god.
okay.
So, in the feminine god, you describe the feminine, and what stood out to me on page 8, in fact, the divine feminine is kinder. Mother
Yeah.
God cradles our face in velvet palms. That stanza. Would you read that stanza and tell us more about that?
Yeah. The divine feminine is kinder. Mother God cradles our face in velvet palms, renders tender smiles on human angst. Her gentle eyes probe their way through long assembled barriers into my soul. She looks upon the best and worst of me and holds them one and the same. So I was brought up Roman Catholic, which a few people will probably already knows what that means. But so brought up with a patriarchal God, a God that you had to beg forgiveness from, that a God that was judging you constantly, a God that demanded so much of you know, you go to church, you pray, you go to confession, you forget, you confess your sins, and you know, and this God was always judging you, always finding fault. You know, you could never be a good person really with this in the eyes of this God. And I rebelled against that completely as a teenager. And as soon as I was able to make my own decisions, like I was done with God. I wasn't done with an intelligence behind life. That kind of was still, that always seemed to me still that there was something behind life. But the word God, like I couldn't call it God. Like it wasn't, the connotations were too strong. But then when I came across the principles and started to look deeper inside, it started to seem to me like this God is not that kind of God. I don't believe that God is that judgmental, is that harsh. And I started to see that that potentially there's a feminine God. And I really like this feminine God. I really like this person. There's a gentleness to her. It's absolutely unconditional love, regardless of you know, any of my foibles or misdemeanors and that kind of thing. And that really started to make sense to me. And I think that came through for me in this writing, that this God that I have a deep faith in now, a deep belief in, is that feminine aspect. It's not that judgmental, harsh God. And I have questions for God. I still have questions for God which go unanswered, but I really feel that, and that, you know, that really helps me. I really like that.
Did some of your questions for God get answered in this book?
Yes. And I think it was as a collective, can't think of any particular lines and things that spring to mind that are answers. But through all of this, there were answers that came through. I saw things that I didn't realize I'd seen. I kind of got a clarity around things. Like the feminine God thing, that became clearer to me through the writing. That was kind of an answer to that. And seeing how some of the conditioning has affected my life, you know, that's always helpful answers to me. And in that particular bit where it's like this feminine God can somehow get, like, the barriers that I've put up against that she can somehow get around those in a really gentle way. And so I feel like I feel like it's more of a heart thing than it is a head thing.
And I loved that line, by the way, the barriers, the carefully constructed barriers. And sounds like you're saying that because of that realization of this divine feminine, life is actually answering your questions
Yeah.
as you go much more fully, because it's beneath the barriers. Yeah, nice, beautiful. Beautiful. You're getting loads of comments.
Hey. Oh, Raina always asks the big questions, doesn't she? What questions have gone unanswered? Thank you, Raina. There's always unanswered questions, isn't there? Because, you know, we live in a world that seems to be going mad. And I don't know how, there's so much awful things going on in the world. And for me, it's like, if God can't be God, and this is very controversial now, I think, God can't be behind only the good things, the things that we determine to be good, and not because everything's created somehow. And so like it's still a big question around that, about all the horrible stuff that happens in the world. If we have this feminine God, I don't know how all of that happens still. And it's got something to do with, we've also been given some kind of free will. So that's a big question that I haven't got answered yet. Thank you, Rainu, for asking the hard questions.
Well, you've got another hard question
Mm-hmm.
from Reese, who says, how does one get to that perspective from the perspective that they're at?
So I think, Reese, I kind of noticed a comment from Reese while we did the previous one about how you see other people. I think how I came to it was that I was really able to see how my behavior is affected by my thinking and my conditioning. And I would love to be excused by the people who love me and the people who know me for those moments when I'm not my best. When I'm not the best, when I'm worried, or when I'm scared, or when I'm anxious, or when I've got angry about something, and my thinking is distorting the way that I'm experiencing life, and therefore I'm not the nicest person. I don't want anybody thinking that I have this taped, because I certainly don't. But realizing that I would love for people to be kind and generous towards me when I'm not at my best. And if I want people to be like that with me, then I have to be like that with other people. And I also saw that the reason why we get caught up in certain behaviors is because we're caught up in some kind of thinking, which is suffering. Like whenever we're behaving in a way that is not pleasant, or we're suffering, like there's something going on inside us that is not a happy place. And so if that's what's happening for me, then that's what must be happening for other people. And if that's what's happening for other people, when somebody behaves badly, they're suffering. And that enables me to be much more compassionate towards that person in the face of whatever it is that might be going on. I don't know if that answers your question, Reese.
Like a small light inside yourself you followed for a long time, he says.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. So, in Is There a Higher Power? There's a stanza in here that says, starts with, accord me a glimpse of those rooms. I think there's a story behind that you might want to share, if you would like to.
I would love to. This might sound a bit woo-woo as well, but I'll read the section and then I'll talk about it.
Yes.
Accord me a glimpse of those rooms in the Father's mansion, outside of consciousness, a chink in the wall, a crack through which I glimpse the eternal, where she is seated, still and patient. Her for whom time is of no essence. She who will wait through eternity, and it will be soon enough. Oh gosh, didn't realize that would come out like that. So the she, I think people might think the she is the feminine god, and she's not. So the she that I'm referring to is my nan, who died in 1994. I was very close to my nan. If my cousin's still here, he will know she was a very special lady. And I haven't asked permission to share this, actually, just thinking about it. But Ash was studying a mediumship course, and we kept saying he should practice. We should set up a session and so he could practice doing the mediumship. And I've always in my life been very cynical about mediums and psychics. And I've seen 2 psychics in the past and still very cynical about them. I thought, yeah, they've got the good crack going on here, but they're not really seeing anything. So anyway, this one day we decided that we would practice this mediumship course. So we sit down and we get all set up and we get really present and we get really quiet. And Ash says, there's a lady here. She's sitting to the left of the coal fire. She's still and she's serene. And she says, I've waited a long time for this. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, I knew who it was. It was my nan. And I reacted the way that I'm reacting right now. And Ash was like, I think he was shocked to see my reaction. I was shocked that this had happened. And that was the end of it. Like we couldn't carry on. But I had this image of my nan waiting for the whole of eternity, and it wouldn't be long. It wouldn't be a long wait. Eternity will be here, whenever it's here, and she's sat patiently waiting. So it was really interesting to me how that showed up.
Yeah.
Writing, a real life experience, but we had that experience, but what happens in the writing is when you write about something like that, you see the thing that happened, you see it so much deeper. Like I was really and truly aware, like I felt the presence of my dad and my nan and my grandparents in the past in different ways. And it just really, for me, it really just showed me that those people who have passed over are still very clearly here, very close to us.
Absolutely beautiful. And another thing is that the event with Ash happened quite before you wrote this.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
quite a while.
you didn't write about this deliberately. It came through your writing. Is
Yeah,
that right?
yeah,
Which is
absolutely came through.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when you wrote that, did you know that it was your nan that you were writing about?
As I wrote it and as I saw the words on the page, I knew it was her. Yes.
But
And
you were, as you were writing it, you weren't thinking
yeah,
about it. And
no,
wow,
no.
beautiful. It's a really beautiful demonstration of the style of writing that you do, method writing, when you're writing with nothing on your mind and you're just letting things come through you
Yeah,
and letting creative genius, as Jules would call it, actually do the work. And how, for me, it seems as though how it takes the ingredients of our life and brings them forward and makes sense of them through
yeah.
the writing.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love those moments when something like that happens, because you hear a lot of authors talk about with their writing, it feels like a download, it feels like they're taking dictation, it feels like something's coming through them rather than from them. And that's what I really feel like. I think in all of the writing there's always parts that it's probably coming from our intellect, it's probably coming from our ego, and then sometimes you write things and you go, oh my god, like where did that come from? And sometimes what I love is that sometimes it's just for me, it's just something that I've seen. It's not what I'm trying to impart to anybody else. All of the writing I think I have to think about this now, but it feels like all of the writing I just do for myself. And then it's like, then we go, okay, well, I think there's something in this that might be helpful to other people to read. And the one thing that we didn't talk about, which we planned to talk about, was at the beginning of the book, I say in the
On page
introduction,
2.
yeah, page 2, right at the bottom of page 2, do not try to fathom an explanation from my words, rather let them wash over you, absorb them into your bones, let them seep into your being, and trust that your mind will uncover perfect sense for you. And I know the way that I see it now is that people will read the words, and if they're open, they will see something that is helpful for them. And it won't be my words, it'll be something else that they're seeing in it, because it's their, what's inside them is speaking to them.
Yes, and you can tell that, which you'll go back to the through the comments. There's so many comments here in here where people are seeing something from themselves and resonating with their own stories and so on. So yeah, I think that's a really happy that you've brought us back to that and that reminder. So this is really interesting to me. There's a poem called The Fight for Control on page 17.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, I'm looking at the last stanza on page 19. It's interesting to me, this whole concept of control, and almost like I relate it to free will or
Yeah.
not free will and that whole question. And it stood out for me because it seems to me that you are so brave the way that you abandon control, and you abandon it, you abandon it in your writing, you abandon it in your classes when you're helping people, teaching people, whatever the style is taking. You're so willing and brave, pioneering, to just step into the unknown and allow whatever's going on in the room to come to the surface. And I wrote this about control, and I'd love to hear your take on control and how this one came about.
Yeah, well, I was a control freak. Like, I think that's the thing. I think we all want to try and control everything in our life, don't we? And I've just seen so many times how we just can't control anything, really and truly. We can't control anything. And I saw this really clearly when I started the writing and publishing company, because what happened was that that all started very, very organically. You remember, you were there. I think you saw it happening before I did, even, didn't you? And Jules the same. Like, it was Jules that said, "Oh, Maria's starting a publishing company." I'm going, "Am I?" But so that idea all happened, and I set the company up, and then I had a period where it got really difficult. Like, I was really working hard trying to make the writing work, trying to do the courses, trying to keep up with all the social media, trying to make everything happen. And it was like pushing a rock uphill. And one of the things that I realized when I first wrote my first book, Coaching Presence, one of the things I got really clear on was when it started to feel like I was wading through treacle, that was not a time to start pushing through. That was a time to stop. And I did try to push through to start off with. But then what happened is when I noticed the feeling of wading through treacle, I would stop. I'd go and get a cup of coffee, or I'd go and put some laundry in, or I'd check some emails. And then within a very short amount of time, anything between 5 and 20 minutes, I'd be back to the writing and it would just be flowing again.
Mm.
And the same happened when I started IW Press, is that it all felt like I was wading through treacle. And then I realized, like, I'm trying to make this happen, but this company didn't come into existence by me trying to make it happen. The company came into existence by me following the nudges. And so I realized that, oh, I'm just trying to control things again. And I can't control anything. And then actually, in letting go, and I'm not saying I'm perfect again on this, because I do, I do try to, I do want to make things happen. I do try. But what I find is that when we're following the nudges, a lot of people that I work with seem to think that if they're not pushing hard, if they're not really, got the hand on the steering wheel, driving hard with the foot on the accelerator, nothing's going to happen. My experience has been entirely different. Like, when I stop trying to control everything, I am very dynamic. Like, I can get a lot done. And people do say to me, how much I get done, what the wide variety of things that I get done. Like, I get that a lot. And part of it is because I'm not trying to control it all. And so, just in my planning on a day-to-day basis, I'm not thinking, okay, so what am I going to do next? If I do this, if I do that, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing next, because that's what occurs to me to do next. I've got it written down. I've got all the things that I want to get done written down, but it's not in a controlling way. And it just makes my life seem so much easier. Like, life is so much easier when I'm not trying to really hold on to it. And what I find, like, when I'm talking to people and when I'm working with groups, like, not having that tight rein on what we're supposed to be doing today, and where are we with the agenda and all of that kind of thing, the days are just lovely. And there's so much more seems to come through in that space for people than when I've got a fixed idea of what I want people to see or hear or learn, or whatever it is.
I've loved that. And now I want you to read the last stanza of that poem.
Oh, right, okay. Hmm. I fear my destiny is destitution, a monstrous failure, a life in ruins. This be a prerequisite for my evolution. No, I cannot, will not take the chance. I will not allow life's hands on the steering wheel. I will exert my control, even with the notion it is a veiled and perpetuated fallacy. I said, like, I'm not always do what I say I'm doing.
No, but I love that dichotomy of it's a dance constantly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between letting go and being in control and letting go and being in control. And even when we know
Yeah.
that it's pointless, we still try to. So there was a
Yeah.
beautiful demonstration of that dance there.
Yeah.
And also of even through the writing, that that desire or that will to have more control over life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that is,
amazing.
that those first, as I read those first the first three bits, like, that's my big fear, is that I'm going to have the rug pulled out from underneath me. I'm going to lose everything, the destitution, and I have this God, this feminine God who's kind, who's loving, and abundance. There's so much abundance in the world. But the thing that really worries me is God's going to take it all away from me for the sake of my evolution. That's my big fear. So,
Yeah, of course. And that comes through. Yeah, absolutely. So the second thing that I would love, because we've got a little bit of time just before we do the final thing, is just if you talked about what your hopes are for people reading this book.
the biggest thing for me is that if somebody reads it and they see something about themselves that allows them to have an easier life, And when I say an easier life, I mean an easier internal life. So you can have, last year we had a really tough year with Ash and his cancer. I think that year was so much easier because of the understanding that I have. Don't get me wrong, it was a difficult year and we went through difficult times, and I was howling at God at one particular moment in time. But it was still way easier because of what I was seeing about how life works over the last several years, and my internal life is way easier now than it ever used to be. So I just love for people to read it and see something that makes their life, their internal life, easier. That's my hope and my prayer for the book. That's why I put it out into the world.
Wow. Wow. Beautiful. And we actually forgot to ask this when we were rehearsing, but do you want to talk about what's next for you?
Oh, could do. So I'm actually, some people are in class with me. Georgia is in class with me still, and Seela. I'm actually working on a memoir based on last year. My experience of last year, not so, watching somebody go through cancer, go through a major surgery, and the whole story of it. It's very different writing again for me. It's very different knowing what I'm writing about. Like, I know the whole story, I know how it turns out, and luckily it has a happy ending. But still writing in that way of not knowing exactly what's going to come out on the page, and still in writing about some of the things that were happening on a day-by-day basis, particularly for the first few days. And the book might only, at the end of the day, cover a very short period of time, because I'm writing so much about a very short period of time so far. So that's going to be, I don't know when that'll come out, I don't know when it'll be finished. I'm still working on that, but that's what I'm writing. That's what I'm writing at the moment. I'm going to be teaching some of the method writing very soon. I've been a teaching assistant for a while. Jules has been asking me to teach with her for a long time, and it's never been the right time, it's never felt like a yes up until now. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to our writing retreat in September. We've got Lorraine here, who joined us last year,
And Liz.
and Liz, who was
And
over.
Chris.
Yes, I was trying to remember who was here and who was at the. We had a fabulous time, didn't we? Really lovely time. So looking forward to that, and yeah, looking forward to see what life brings.
Oh, amazing. And I'm just going to sneak this one in. It occurred to me to ask you, what would you say, because your writing is so exquisite, especially in this book, This One Life, what would you say to aspiring writers who maybe are not quite there, because you've been writing for a long time now, and I see that this work is a accumulation of and a stripping away
Yeah.
of all of that time and that and so on. What would you say to an aspiring writer, just briefly?
Ignore all the thinking that tells you that you're not a writer, and just write. Like, write down, and don't try to be a clever writer. Like, this book hasn't come out because I was trying to be a clever writer. That's not how it happened. And the most interesting writing is when you write really plainly and simply in your voice.
Yeah.
Trying to find that on the pages, and that's, the first level of method writing is absolutely about finding your voice on the page, and everything else is built on top of that. But the key thing is just ignore all of the thinking that tells you you're not a writer.
Yeah,
Not true.
good advice. So in this last little section, we're going to say some thank yous, and then we're going to end with your poem, Death, which has already been mentioned by Gemma. So First of all, I'd like to say thank you to you for such a wonderful evening. It's been an absolute delight being able to be part of this. And yeah, I know you don't like loads of compliments, but you're amazing. And thank you to everyone for being here. You've really, really made it for us.
Yeah.
And the best way that you can thank Maria is by leaving her a review, which are really hard to get. And when you're an author, you'll find out.
Yeah.
But we really appreciate you. There's lots of other things that you could be doing with your evening, so we appreciate you, and we appreciate you on the replay. And thank you very, very much for listening in. And thank you to Dazzle for such amazing tech and looking after us in the background. And you wanted to say a few thank yous, Maria.
Yes, I do. So I have some really lovely testimonials in the front of the book. I'm not going to put anybody's name on it because I know I'm going to miss people's names, and I don't want to miss anybody's names, but some of you are here. So I really want to thank you for the testimonials, which were the testimonials just could not, like, I could not have imagined how lovely they would be. You know, sometimes I heard once that I think it was Jamie Fiora Higgins, when she was publishing Bully Market, she approached somebody for a testimonial and they asked her to write the testimonial and say what, you know, they put their name to it. And nobody's ever asked me to do that, thank goodness. But if I had to write a testimonial for my book, it would be nowhere near as nice and lovely and warm as the testimonials that I received for this book. So first of all, thank you to those people, and you know, for supporting me in that way. And then this time for this book, I asked people to volunteer to be part of a book launch team, and quite a few of those people are here as well, and they have been amazing. Like, even, you know, there were certain things I said to them, would you do this and would you do that? And they've gone over and above what I would have expected them to do. So thank you to my book launch team. Thank you to Jules. I have to say thank you to Jules Swales for being a fabulous teacher. Thank you to Linda for being such a wonderful editor. Thank you so much for all of that. And thank you to you. Thank you to you. This, like, you are so good at this. You're so good at this. You make this such a lovely experience. So that's really wonderful. And thank you to Dazzle, who you already mentioned. Thank you, but thank you from me as well. But it's just, you know, it's such a delight to do this conversation with you. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for being
You're the talent and you make it easy, so I can't take any of it. We are going to, Ria's going to read the last poem. As we said, what we would like to do is a silent leave. So she'll read the poem, we'll stay for a few seconds and just in a reflective space, and then we'll close the meeting. So and the reason for doing that is because Maria's very keen that you remember that what you feel when you hear her words is coming from within you, and that you are the source. And so you take that with you. We would love you to follow Ria on Facebook, sign up to her mailing list, share the recording when it comes out, get the word out there. Obviously, buy the book, This One Life, and leave a review, please.
The purpose of life, to love and be loved. Let not one scar appear on another's soul, smote by your malice. Let not one heart be encumbered by contempt. Let not one life be oppressed by greed. Let not your one life be a blight on another's. Show kindness where there is pain and hurt. Compassion where there is grief and sadness. Be peace in the midst of war. Generosity in poverty. Be a shining light of joy and contentment in a world bereft. Love where there is hate. Live from love, not tough love, not killing with kindness. Be sweetness of heart, kindness of tongue, gentleness of touch. That is love and only love. When death arrives, let the one thing you carry from this life to the next be love.